Can we go?
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, first, I guess I'll introduce myself formally for those who don't know. So welcome to the October 24th, 2023 meeting of the Youth and Education Committee of Community Board 6. My name is John Keller, and I'm chair of the committee. Tonight, we are joined by Community Coordinator Brian Lafferty in person and District Manager Jesus Perez as a guest online. This meeting is called to order at 6:35 p.m. And as a reminder, New York State law now requires all community board members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the meeting is adjourned. And members or member of the public who are attending virtually, and we're very happy to have people here. You can raise any questions or comments that you have if you're on Zoom through the Q&A feature. And if you're here in person, just raise your hand, or if I'm ignoring you, just say, hey, I want to talk. Okay. And if there's time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Thank you very much for being here. Okay. And I need a volunteer to take minutes tonight. Would someone be able to give us a hand? Stuart's done it in the past. Would someone,
Yes.
would you do
Yeah,
it?
absolutely.
And I'm very happy.
I'm gonna take it on my phone
To help, so it's not.
But yeah, I can take minutes.
And I don't think the meeting will be complex tonight, but
able to
so
watch
very,
the
Recording as well. Yeah.
just very, very grateful to you. So
Take it.
one of our new members, Roberto Ruiz Melendez, did I say that?
That's
correctly?
right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, for volunteering to take minutes. Now we're going to take attendance, but before we do, I just want to compliment our board office. I attended a meeting virtually last week of another group who will go unidentified, and on Zoom, and I stopped because I couldn't understand a word that was being said. So I just really want to compliment what Jesus and Brian and the entire board staff have done to make these meetings under difficult circumstances accessible. So we will now take attendance by roll call, and Brian Lafferty will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is a quorum. Jonathan Jericho.
Present.
Thank you. Stu Dester.
Present.
Thank you. John Keller.
Here, present.
Thank you. Livia Shrednick.
Present.
Thank you. Rupal Kakad.
Present.
Thank you. Roberto Ruiz Melendez.
Present.
Thank you. Abigail Cruzmark. Not hearing anything. Matthew Weintraub. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Wenite Apu. Okay, not hearing anything. With 1, 2, 3, 5 of 9 members present, we have the quorum.
Thank you. The agenda for tonight, and thank you all for being here. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you, or just about. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. And the minutes for the May 23rd meeting in person of Youth and Education, or Youth and Education Committee meeting, were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand. Seeing no objection, the minutes from the May 23rd, 2023 Youth and Education Committee meeting are adopted. And they will soon be available on the CV6 website. And thanks to all, thanks to the gentleman who compiled them. In order to conduct an efficient, first of all, can everyone listening hear me online? Hi, Len. And I just, since we're going around the room here, we have Len Silverman, who's president of the Community Education Council for District 2, kind enough to join us. And Len, is that background in the Wagner Library?
That is, but I'm faking it. I'm really not here.
Well, I assume you're faking, but
I'm sitting in my living room.
I just wanted to show that I remembered what that room is like. That's the Wagner Middle School Library, which I've been many times. Wonderful school, as are all of our middle schools. Okay. So in order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members who are here in person, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand or just yell at me and I will identify you so you can speak. Committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I will identify you so you can speak. And our member not in person is our Vice Chair, John Dorico. Okay, welcome, John. Thank you for being here. All committee members, it's extremely important that only one person speak at a time so that members of the public watching at home can understand what is being said by each committee member, which is why I made the comment I did at the beginning that if people are talking over each other, this becomes inaudible if you're listening outside. The chat function for committee members present via Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you're having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. And I personally think that's very important because nobody can see the chat and this is a public meeting. Okay. All right, so we're going to go through tonight's agenda. We're very pleased that we're going to have with us Kelly McGuire, the superintendent of District 2, who's advised Brian and I that he will be a few minutes late this evening because he has he's doing back-to-back meetings all day, and we're just very pleased he's coming. So what I would like to do is do a chair's report, and I'm going to just start by reminding people of the two major agenda items that we have on our committee's agenda for this year. The first we're going to kick off tonight, which is issues related to kids of asylum-seeking migrant families in District 2 schools. And so in Community Board 6 schools, which also happen to be District 2 schools, and which is why we have the superintendent of District 2 and the president of the local school board present with us this evening. And I was going to do this under old or new business, but since we're waiting for Kelly, I would like to do this as part of my chair's report, because I can amend the chair's report to include anything I want to put in it, right? Okay. All right. So in June of this year, this committee, working very closely for several months with comprising youth and education, health and human services, and business affairs and licensing, evolved and developed a resolution. And I was tasked by the board chair and Claire Brennan, chair of business affairs and licensing, drove a great colleague, the development of a resolution and on the issue of, and what we ended up with was something on which we thought was the most important thing, which was requiring transparent reporting on enforcement of regulations related to smoke shops operating illegally in Manhattan Community District 6. And those of you who were on the board at the time remember this. We must have spent, this was discussed at every committee, and it was passed unanimously by the 3 committees and then passed. There might have been one objection or abstention by the full board, but virtually unanimously. And what the resolution calls for, and I just noticed that Kelly McGuire, Superintendent of District 2, has joined us. Hey, Kelly, great to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
I see you're still on 7th Avenue, right?
I'm at PS 158.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Well, we'll move up the agenda item you're here for, and as a result, but I do, since I started this, want to finish
No,
this.
please take your time. Take your time.
So there were a number of whereases in there. This was right after the enabling legislation was first passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. And basically what we did was we resolved that the representatives in the Assembly and Senate work with the Office of Cannabis Management to improve the transparency of their reporting on enforcement against illegal smoke shops in Community Board 6 zone. And we asked them to report, and they were originally going to wait and report on January 1st of 2024. And we said, we would like you to report beginning on October 1st, 2023. It's not that, we passed that date. A monthly report on the following: the number of businesses engaged in such activities in Manhattan Community District 6 as of the date of the report. This is all quite public. This is all, it was 39 in favor, one opposed by the full board. The number of administrative inspections of such businesses in the prior 30 days, the penalties and fines imposed on such businesses in the prior 30 days, and the number of commercial landlords that have begun or completed eviction proceedings of such businesses in the prior 30 days. Now, it's not the topic of our discussion here tonight, but I am extremely familiar both with the legislation as well as with the enabling law that was passed, both with Senator Kruger's legislation, who has her office in this building, as well as the enabling legislation on this. So this was already passed, but we have not seen the October report yet. So I spoke with our board chair today, and he and the office are going to follow up with the people who received this notice and say, hey, we did this. Now, the Governor Hochul's credit, or great credit, she's been terrific on this. We passed this resolution on June 16th. And on June 22nd, Governor Hochul came to New York City and basically gave that report for the prior 3 weeks. So we took that event, and we were invited, but were unable to attend. But so we took that as very positive. And so we're basically going back to the governor, and we're going back to all the other people on this list, including the acting tax commissioner and general counsel for the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, Chris Alexander, the executive director of New York State Office of Cannabis Management, and all of our local representatives. And we're basically going to reach out to them again and say, this is a report that our board felt was important. And so this is not a resolution, so I don't have to put it in resolution format. I'm just advising you that we're going to be doing this because we took this, 3 committees of this board, tasked by the chair of the board, Clara Brennan, Elvie Barroso, and myself, took this seriously enough to spend 2 months coming up with a resolution, and we really want to know what they're doing. And that's basically we're going to be very nice about it. But okay. All right. So I had the introduction of new members and a discussion of their priorities as item 2, because Kelly had told me that he might be a little late. But since he's here, what I would like to do is just have the new members introduce themselves by name, and then if time permits and their interest permits at the end, we could have that discussion then and proceed directly to the superintendent. So why don't we start right over here alphabetically at the other end of the alphabet? Okay.
Just name.
Yeah, name, and if you want to say a couple words about why you're on this committee, that'd be great too.
Well, hi, I'm Olivia Shrednick. I am a junior at Friends Seminary, the school in the district. So I'm extra excited for our work in the Youth and Education Committee meeting.
Thank you, Rupal.
Hi, I'm Rupal Kakad. I am on this committee hoping to learn more about the education within the New York City school system. I know very little to nothing about how this works, so I'm hoping to learn something new.
It's an honest opinion, and I think even our superintendent and the president of our local school board would agree that there's something new to learn every day about New York City public schools. So you've come to the right place for that.
I'm Stuart Desser. I have long felt that education was of critical importance, and we should give it more weight than we generally do in our consideration. And in a nutshell, that's why I'm here.
I am Roberto Ruiz. In my day job, I am the lead for education licensing worldwide for Microsoft. So know a little bit about this space. Yeah, and that's why I'm here.
I knew you were at Microsoft. I didn't know you were okay, we'll be talking about that offline at some other point, because that's a topic, the use of technology in especially early childhood education is of great interest to me, but not on the agenda here tonight. Okay, so without further ado, and with just a brief introduction, I'm going to turn the proceedings at this point over to Kelly McGuire, who has been superintendent of District 2 for several years now, and with whom I've been privileged to have the chance to work. And Kelly actually attended an earlier meeting of this committee with Marisol Rosales, as you'll recall, Kelly, and you both attended an earlier committee meeting of CB6 several years ago. Kelly is a friend of CB6, and I told him that we were going to be talking about the issues related to the kids of asylum-seeking migrants in District 2 schools, and he was kind enough to come and share some of his thoughts with us. From my perspective, this is an exploratory meeting, so that we can get an idea of how we can best be of use to Kelly and his office. So without further ado, Kelly, thanks again for extending an already long day.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever. And, to anybody who is interested in learning about the New York City Department of Education, I am right there with you in my constant research and learning. There's something new that I learn every year. And it is funny that this is now, this is my third full year going into, I guess, like fourth calendar year of holding this position, but it's it feels very, very short, but I'm happy to be here and to just speak a little bit about the district in general, and also then to zero in a little bit on the work that we're doing around serving and supporting students and their families who are seeking asylum in the city. I will say that we're off to a really strong start to the school year. We had a few folks retire in our district and a few people who have left to move on to other things, but we're very happy about the new school leadership that have been new school leaders who have joined our district, and about the way that they've kicked off the year. It's been a strong and positive start to the year all around. And we're happy that even controlling for the new students that we have coming into the district, we have in several of our schools seen an increase in the number of students who are enrolling in our District 2 schools. And so that's a really positive thing that we have here as well. We are excited about two primary curricular instruction initiatives. Poor Len has heard about this a million times on CEC, but we're really looking at strengthening foundational literacy instruction and practice and outcomes for kids in our pre-K through 3 grades, as well as implementing a new math program in middle school called Illustrative Math. We're we're coming off of a school year in which we did see a drop in the number of incidences of misbehavior and suspension. We are seeing more and more of our schools implementing good structures that are helping to support students both academically and social emotionally. This year, we had several of our schools implement additional periods into their school day and reallocate those both to enrichment, helping to strengthen and support structures for students who are not yet working at grade level in academics, as well as to add time into days for morning meeting advisory check-ins and help to really strengthen those social emotional learning skills that we know are so important to a student's academic success in school. A little bit about serving and supporting students who are living in temporary housing, but with a special focus on our students and families who are seeking asylum in the country. So I had this really wonderful opportunity this past Friday to visit PS 51, which is not in CB6, but on the west side. PS 51 is currently serving over 100 students in their school community from families who are seeking asylum. And they really have just done a wonderful job. I feel like I really had the opportunity to learn a lot about what it takes to serve this population of students and families really, really well. I was joined by a few elected officials and community board a few elected officials and members of community-based organizations. And we toured classrooms. We toured classrooms that were taught in a transitional bilingual format where we had the teacher was using primarily Spanish at this time of the year, and then we'll slowly wean away from that as the year goes on. We observed a dual language program at PS 51. We observed students who are participating in a pull-out and push-in ESL classes. I think it's really important to note, and the principal made a really great point of this, is that a lot of the families who are here from Spanish-speaking countries in Central and South America have opted actually to not have their children participate in transitional bilingual or dual language programs because they really want them to learn English. And she's seeing the greatest gains in students' English acquisition in classrooms that are not specifically dual language. She hearkened back to a lot of those experiences that I think many of us had, where we had a student who maybe enrolled in the high school that we were attending and didn't speak English when they came in, but then by the end of the year, they were really socializing in English and had been able to maintain their home language as well. So, the school does a really great job of supporting families who are speaking Spanish or who speak Spanish, and have a lot of staff members on hand who speak Spanish and are able to give them information about the school and what their kids might need, what the school is doing to offer supports, explain different options that are available to families. But again, like she reiterated, the strong work that's happening in her classrooms to help kids acquire English. I asked her to talk a little bit about some of the individual stories that they were hearing in the school community, and I think that these are stories that many of our school leaders and teachers are hearing all over the city, not just of, very challenging journeys here, but ways that families are working to make it in the city. There are some families who are staying in our shelters and have remained there for a good amount of time, but there are also a lot that are transitioning out, either to live and move to different parts of the country or to move in with friends and family. And so there's a lot of moving around, but PS 51, I think that a data point that is important to note here, and again, something to learn, moving forward, is that of the students that they are serving, they are only have lost about 20 kids who have moved outside of the PS 51 zone and enrolled in other schools in the city. So, we certainly want to help and support families to get to a place of stability where they can really begin to make some inroads into living in New York City. But I think just says a lot about what a school and a school community can do, and the important role that it can play in a family's life. So much so that families are, continuing to commute from Brooklyn and Queens to attend PS 51. So that's something I think to learn there, especially as we're looking at some of the schools in CB6 that are serving large numbers of kids from families seeking asylum. Baruch Middle School, PS 116, PS 281, all three of those schools are serving fairly sizable numbers. Baruch is serving about 80 kids, PS 116 about 100, and PS 281 about 30. PS 116 has historically in our district served a lot of kids who are living in temporary housing, not just students from families seeking asylum, but a lot of New Yorkers who are participating in the temporary housing system. And so they have some supports that are built into the school. But I think that some of there's a few things that we should look to really strengthen the resources that are there, not just for students that are living in temporary housing or students from families seeking asylum, but these are supports that all of the kids who are enrolled in New York City public schools could really benefit from. Of course, some may only participate in community school related resources like weekend activities or clothing swaps, technology swaps, those kinds of things that might only appeal to a certain segment of population in schools, but other things are I just think would really benefit all kids. And the more that we can strengthen things like after school programs for elementary school aged kids, after school programs that are free for elementary school aged kids is a huge one. PS 51, and we have a few other schools in our district that are a part of funding and programs that are related to the Department of Youth and Community Development. Do offer free after school programs. And that's just something that I hear in our schools with the highest number of students who receive free and reduced lunch, and also in schools that have very low numbers of kids who receive free and reduced lunch. So, and that's something that our new families are certainly taking advantage of, is strong after school programs. And another one is both our 3K and pre-K programs. We have a waiting list in this district of several hundred kids who are waiting for 3K programs. And but we have some vacancies in our pre-K classrooms. And I asked, why do we have these spaces in our pre-K programs? Well, what we're hearing again and again is parents of 3K kids, those children are just beginning to get into school. And so a shorter day, an 8:30 to 3 o'clock day is appropriate and a good start for kids who are entering 3K. Parents who have kids in pre-K, and maybe their children have participated in either our 3K program or a different 3K program, by the time they're ready for pre-K, many families believe that their kids are ready for a longer day. And very few of our community-based organizations are licensed to be able to provide after-school programs for pre-K aged kids. And so, expanding our 3K programs, strengthening after-school for pre-K, we're constantly thinking about how it is that we can create stronger school programs here. I know these things cost money for sure. And I know that, our city is in a tough spot for that. But if we're I guess if the mayor is listening in, you know, we a strong investment here in some of these programs are what we're seeing as you know, being very important for building sustained and thriving schools in the district. So that's what I can comment on that, but I'm happy to, you know, answer any questions or talk about any ideas. Yep.
Let me I just first of all, thank you. And secondly, I'm going to ask a factoid related question and then a substantive question, and then turn it over to my fellow committee members, including John DeRico, who's online. From a fact point of view, there is no report at this point of the number of kids by school. Is that by design, or is this a DOE, like we just can't quite get our hands around it yet thing, which we've both been around enough to understand?
Sure. Yeah, no, I don't, any kind of number that is related to the population of kids who are attending school in our district, or specific numbers that are related to subgroups of kids, those only come out when there is this official audited register. I know that these numbers are important to the community board. They're important to our community education council. So we've been, you know, providing some ballpark numbers here. And we're serving about 1,600 kids, 1,700 kids maybe across the district. Specifically kids who are, I think, kids who are from families seeking asylum in the city. So these numbers that I quoted from, you know, 104, 116, 281, those are, you know, kind of some ballpark numbers. And, you know, PS 116, being a school that had served, has historically served a large number of kids from who are living in temporary housing, Baruch Middle School as well. And yeah, so that's where those numbers are coming in. But when that official audited register comes out, then we'll be able to provide some more specific numbers.
First, it's really helpful that you gave us that broad number. And I actually had a list that I had 116, 80, and the River School as the three big ones, and it looks like we got that pretty accurately. So we'll look forward to when the DOE, when does that report typically come out?
Well, I mean, the twist here is that the numbers are going to come out from the last school year in another month or so. So we may have to wait a little bit. I'm sorry. No, I apologize for that. It should be coming out in about a month, I would guess.
All right, so that's the factoid question, and we look forward to seeing it. But you've certainly given us an idea of the scale in Community Board 6 schools. Now, the substantive question I have goes to the point you made on pre-K hours. And what I really want to ask you is, and you don't have to answer it right away if you want to think about it, what, as a community board, what we've done on the education committee for the several years that I've run it, is we've always tried to focus on what would help schools in our zone, okay? But let me just ask you a general question then. You said expanded hours for pre-K. What if you had to make a list of the three things that you really, you know, as a superintendent of this district, which is a huge job, and what, 48 schools? Is it, I think, something like that? It's a lot of schools. Right?
49 plus a pre-K center, a big pre-K center, yeah.
Okay, so how can we help? Because we write resolutions and they get some attention, and if people don't pay attention to them, we nudge them. So if you want to think about it as you talk with my colleagues, but let us know, because we'll be meeting again in November, and I would like to put something substantive together that we go to the DOE with, which we can do a little more freely than, you know, part of the DOE can do, I guess is what I'm saying. So, but just off the top of your head, beyond the pre-K hours, what would be other critical issues where we want to help these kids that we could focus on? And as I said, if you want to think about it, that's fine too.
Sure. Yeah, I will think about it a little bit. But you know, I think that some of the things that that we were talking about here, perhaps we don't need to have, every school in the district, turn into a community school. But by community school, I mean this like type of wraparound services for both students and families. But I do think that, really thinking about the lives of working families in our district. And I'm not talking about just like families who are, living in poverty or families who receive free lunch. These are things I think that, we've had a lot of conversations about how it is that we can, strengthen the population, increase the population of kids who are going to school in our district. And, some of these, we have some very high quality programs and some very high quality schools in our district. My work is all about trying to make those our schools even stronger. But I do think that there are some structural things that are challenging, and not having after school available for families is a structural thing, and it would be of huge benefit to so many families.
Okay, I'm gonna be quiet because I've spoken enough, and I'm gonna ask members of the committee, whoever wants to put your hand up, and I'm gonna defer to my vice chair, Jonathan DeRico, if he would like to ask the first question. John, do you have a question, or do you want to pass on the question at this point?
John, that's very generous of you. Your second question actually stole my question. So I'm shamed and humbled. I don't have any questions at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask the members present here just to if you want to ask Superintendent McGuire a question and talk to him, go right ahead.
My hand is always up. I'm not going to apologize for taking so much time. Okay, first, I read a few days ago in the Atlantic Monthly that one way to improve education, at least that's shown success in these programs that were studied, is for the teacher to follow the students when the students graduate from one grade to the next. And the concept is, I think, basically that the teacher gets to know the students better and the grades improve. I mean, at least according to the data reported in this article, continuity is obviously a huge issue for kids who are seeking asylum. And it's an issue that looks like we should look at even for kids who have been in the system. So are you looking at anything like that, or considering how to maintain some continuity for these kids who are living a pretty discontinuous life?
Yes, I read that article as well and was really excited about it. I had just left a school that is doing that. PS1 in Chinatown is actually engaged in looping, and there are a bunch of our schools that are doing it here and there. But looking at it as a policy may actually require some engagement with our central office, some engagement with our teachers union to put something like that into place. There are some, factors that might weigh in on that, including, teachers having a right, the more veteran teachers having a right to return to a position that they previously occupied. But I think it's really something that's really exciting. I think it could be an important factor in serving all kids, like you noted. And I think it's definitely worth some further study. But I'm excited to look at it specifically in relationship to this one school, to one of our schools, PS1, where the principal really rallied her whole staff and said, we need to do this year for the students that we're serving. And so they are not only doing it, but they have a little bit of a mission behind the work that they're doing this year too. So.
Okay, and you talked about after-school programs. Can you elaborate? And they, after-school programs can do much more than just serve the educational mission. But how do they serve education, and what can we in the community do, either to supplement those programs or to work with them in some way?
Yeah. So, I have a long, my career is mostly in middle school. I was a middle school teacher and a middle school principal. And one of the greatest, one of the best impacts that a government level decision had on my ability to serve and support my middle school age students was the decision to have universal after school in all of our middle schools, as facilitated by the Department of Youth and Community Development. We partnered with Manhattan Youth, which is really the organization that's thriving in almost all of our middle schools. It not only helped with our school budgetarily, which every year I would set aside maybe $25,000 or $30,000 to try to do as much as I could for an after-school program. But the end result was just a few things that were run by teachers who were able to dedicate the time to running a club after school or running a sport after school. This really brought in a full and comprehensive program that was sports and arts and academics. We were able to run a SHSAT prep class through that program. Of course, all of the different sports and all kinds of new arts programs. I had a pair of twins who got involved in the fencing team, ended up getting a scholarship to NYU. They're graduated from NYU now, banking, but they're continuing with their work as fencers. It's just a really wonderful opportunity to expose kids to so many different things that you can't fit into the school day, as well as give them the chance to really practice some of these social skills that they need and can apply in different environments. It's the environment is not just the classroom. They have to, learn to participate as members of a team, and and navigate time management. All kinds of different skills are learned that way. So that was just had an incredible impact on our school and the students that we were serving.
Thank you. Can I? Yeah. Okay. I see Len Silverman, president of CEC, too. Len, you have your hand raised, but I'm going to go to the committee members first if they have any questions.
I just have a quick question regarding the Adams administration's move to move the families out of shelters, and a lot of them may be going to Floyd Bennett Field, where the feds have set up this quasi tent city, or set up is a strong term there, but so I'm trying to understand what kind of continuity from a student kind of information system perspective exists within the New York City school system, so that when they get shipped off to Brooklyn, what exactly happens to the students?
Well, I will say that two things. One, I have not gotten much information about that proposal as of yet, and but I will say that it is very much on the minds of our teachers and school leaders, who are very worried about the continuity of learning for kids. So we'll see how that ends up playing out, and what the possibilities are for kids to be able to remain in the schools in which they're working. My only source of knowledge so far is what we've read in the papers, and so I'm anxious to learn more about how it is that we'll continue to provide that continuity for kids. In terms of student information systems, it's there should now be, when kids were first arriving to our city from Central and South America in this, wave of families seeking asylum, many came with not having had or having lost in their long journey identifying information. And so that was difficult and tricky when we were first enrolling some students. A lot of families did come with all of their information, but for some, it was a little tricky. Now that families have been in the system, they have all kinds of identifying information. A copy of a report card would have a student's identification number on it, and that same identification number travels with them throughout the course of their career in the Department of Education. I think that there's a capacity to be able to, transfer records and things like that electronically, that we're not so worried about. And certainly we're just in like a better place to be able to track kids. There some of the benefit. I mean, this is one of the reasons why Chancellor Banks has been touting the importance of the NYC Reads program, is that we do have a number of kids who, even prior to this crisis around serving families and students seeking asylum, who are somewhat transient within the Department of Education schools, and by being able to have fewer curricula that are being implemented in our schools, there's a greater chance of having contiguous learning, even if kids need to change schools.
Thank you.
Just another quick question, just regarding the how is this affecting, or this being the migrant issue affecting kids with IEPs or kids who need a specific amount? Is there like a lot of with this new noise added to the model, so to speak, is it affecting the IEP process?
We are currently serving very few kids with IEPs who have come into the schools. There are some who had special services in their home country that were able to quickly complete a transition evaluation, so that kids automatically shift into services and supports for kids with disabilities. There are some rules around how early and how quickly you can evaluate students for a potential disability when they are maybe learning in a language that is different from their home language. We don't want to evaluate students who may not have had a formal schooling in their home language, and all of a sudden, automatically, call it a learning disability. So we do want to make sure that we have plenty of time to, get to know kids, engage them in some instruction, see how it is that they're taking to that instruction. Does there appear to be any kind of delay, whether they're learning in their home language or they're learning English? And then certainly we can begin the IEP process. But just so far, this this population of students is fairly new to our schools, and so we're not seeing tons of kids that are being evaluated right now. But we certainly can do that both in home languages and in English too.
Thank you.
Olivia, question?
Yeah.
Well, Kelly, I learned something new here today. Thank you. The whole idea of being sensitive to, it's new as a theme, but being sensitive that someone who is not proficient in English as a native language not be quickly judged as a candidate with a student with a disability. I really it's very thought-provoking, and you've given me several ideas here for potential resolution at our next meeting. I'm going to defer now briefly to Len Silverman, had his hand up, who is the president of our local school board, CEC2, and whom I know Kelly has many interactions with, so I'm going to let Len ask or raise any issues he wants to raise.
So I'm going to be brief. First, I want to thank Community Board 6. This committee welcome new members. You guys are fantastic. You do a great and amazing job of really bringing important educational issues to our community. So thank you on behalf of the Community Education Council of District 2. I think it'll be really helpful, and I'll do this as quickly as possible, just to summarize from the parents' perspective the issues that we're concerned about in our district. And I think that would really also give your committee members an idea of really kind of break it down really succinctly. The first issue, and that was alluded to earlier, is we're in a crisis. Make no doubt about it. We're in a crisis. We don't know how many more children are going to be entering the system. We don't know how long it's going to continue for, and I believe there's limited space. So the first issue is the number of migrant students in our district. And Kelly has spoken at our meetings, and we're hearing numbers, I think, and anywhere from 1,600, maybe 1,900 students. I'm not sure. The concern is we're really not even sure about the numbers, and I don't think Kelly has all that information. And that's a little frightening that the DOE doesn't really provide that kind of data for our communities. And the next issue and I would just say our district in total, I think it ranges from 20,000 to 23,000 students. So if you're talking about those numbers, you're talking about a fairly large percentage of an influx of students. Kelly can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure what the most recent population of our students in our district is. The other issue that John mentioned and brought up is you have an unequal distribution. Some people would say inequitable distribution of where those students are heading. And the schools that they're going to, and that affects our community deeply because you have some schools that are taking in large numbers. You heard 80, you heard 100. That's an enormous amount of students for certain schools that are really having to deal and scramble. And the principals of those schools, the administration, the teachers are really doing an amazing job of trying to deal with an influx, and what they're having to deal with is just a tough situation, and I think they're handling it as best they can. But that unequal distribution of students per school, and it's done based on where shelters might be, and I'm not sure exactly what the other factors are, but that's a concern in our district. I just want to also humanize this issue because we tend to think of it as numbers. We've talked about numbers, but these are actual students. And when you look at it from the classroom perspective, what I've been hearing from parents are you have two situations that happen, and I'm not saying this is the case in every situation, but you have classrooms where migrant students are coming in, and either the teacher is spending an enormous amount of time dealing with those migrant students, and time is being diverted away from students that were there before. So we're hearing that from parents, that it's trying to find that balance between how do you deal with newer kids that are coming in, how do you make sure that they're getting the attention they need. So that's an important issue. And the other situation is sometimes they're being completely ignored. And that's the worst situation I've heard. I've heard from some parents in our district that say, hey, we've got 2 migrant kids in my son's class, and the teacher doesn't pay any attention. They sit in the corner and they're not being given any instruction whatsoever. So that's a serious cause for concern. These are human beings, and regardless of what side you are, or if you choose to take a side, and there is a political aspect to this, these are human beings, and we owe them, we owe them services, we owe them certain rights, and we really can't let them we can't just let people languish in this kind of a situation. I'm almost done. The other situations has to do with funding. And as Kelly knows, the funding that schools get is based on when those students might be in a particular school. And we're seeing increased numbers in the transiency of those students where kids are being shifted around. You heard that was mentioned earlier. And that makes it not only harder to deal with what the resources that these students are getting, but I was a little concerned with Superintendent McGuire's answer. It's not his fault, but I don't know what resources these kids are getting when they shifted from one school to another. If I had to suspect, I'm not sure, what if any continuity there is in terms of their education. And it's hard enough being a student in temporary housing, let alone trying to learn in that kind of environment. So that's a cause for concern. And then finally, and I appreciate the time you've given me, the issue of supports. Like, what can we do as a community to support Superintendent McGuire? What can we do to support these students? What can we do as parents to support these communities, these human beings that really need these resources, and that we can do? And I know there's been a lot of grassroots efforts to provide them with, whether it's clothing, whether it's supplies. That's a whole other aspect that the community can get involved with. But it's going to take a village. We are in the middle of a crisis, but I hope we will never lose sight of the humanity that is behind this and what is actually happening in the classroom and the classroom experience that students in our district are having, because I think that's really important. And I think hats off to you, Superintendent McGuire. I know you're dealing with a tough situation. Finally, the very last thing I will say is, when you do have these large numbers of migrants, students, I think it is also masking. There is a trend of lowered enrollment in District 2 that we need to look at. And that gets a little skewed in the numbers. So that's another issue that we have to take a look at. But this is a crisis, and I think our community really has to band together to handle it appropriately. Thank you. Sorry for rambling, but I just wanted, I think I could kind of wrap it up for you.
It's that focused. It's okay to ramble. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. We have a member of the public who has gone to the trouble of coming to East 43rd Street here tonight. And if you want to, if you have a question, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Stella. I'm a concerned citizen, I would say. I especially am worried about students being moved around in schools and not getting the support that they need. Especially in terms of learning how to read. I think it's one of the most important skills that you can have, and every kid deserves the chance to learn. And I don't know that the current circumstances are going to be conducive to that, especially given this huge influx of students who aren't necessarily English as their first language.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to respect Superintendent McGuire's time because he's been so generous with it already. I have written down here multiple issues that I think, are going to get our attention, starting with, it's going to go through them. First of all, the pre-K hours. That was a very practical issue. The whole idea of what kind of after-school support you give to these kids. And then the really on target continuity issue, and how do we assure continuity, especially if, as Len just said, we recognize the transiency here, and how do we provide for continuity amidst transiency? And those of us that are familiar with how schools get funded know that, the kid moves, and does the Galaxy budget allocation, go with the kid, and how does that happen? These are all really important things. And so what I would like to do, I'd like to give Superintendent McGuire a chance to have the last word here if he wishes to make a final comment, and then I'm going to make a suggestion for how we move forward.
Sure. No, I'm very happy to do so. And I will say that on the issue of budget, the city hasn't ignored the factor of transiency, and so there have been additional funding streams, special Miranda that have been put into place that have allocated funds per pupil for students who are living in temporary housing. And we know that October 31st is an important date in which we take this kind of like virtual, this snapshot of what a school's population might be. And then that snapshot looking at the number of students, the different categories that they might fall into or may draw additional funds from, students with disabilities, students in temporary housing, students who are living in poverty. So we that snapshot is taken on October 31st, but the city has allocated these different Miranda so that if a student does move, then we can provide some financial support for that student in their new school. I guess I would also just like to say that this was certainly a challenge, especially in this district. I was talking with a few people from outside of New York today at a professional learning activity we were doing, and I was telling them about the history of serving, or not the history, but like the profile of how it is that we serve and support students with who are learning English in this district. And many of the programs that we have here and that we've historically had have been in Chinatown, supporting students who are moving to New York from and learning with Chinese as a home language, and fewer with Spanish as a home language. So this was certainly a big deal when we started serving families who are coming in speaking predominantly Spanish. Of course, like some other languages are included as well, and some other families coming from other countries as well, but predominantly Spanish. This was not a district that had tons of programs set up for English as a new language students who are Spanish speaking, but our schools have made incredible strides over the past year, and schools have tapped into new groups of teachers to hire. They've set up programs to serve and support students who have Spanish as a home language. They've hired additional staff. One of the ways in which we've used the additional funding that the city has provided is to quickly hire substitute paraprofessionals to help to translate for families. So, some of the stories that people have been sharing about, students being ignored or put into a corner are stories that maybe we saw in some, and it is not what we wanted to see, but we saw when schools were first serving kids last year. That is not something that is occurring in our district now. And this visit to PS 51 was just the first of several visits that we're planning on doing with community members to different schools around the district to help to talk about this issue and see what's happening in our classrooms. And so it is not just, it is certainly a challenge, but it is also turned into a really beautiful enhancement of some of our schools in the ways that communities are rallying and supporting different groups of families that we hadn't historically supported in this district. And, I couldn't be prouder of the work that our schools are doing to support our new families. So, yeah, I just look forward to, continuing to talk about this and to continuing to, share in some of the great things that are happening. And I am very hopeful that some of the programs that we are setting up, looking at dual language programs for kids who may be English only speakers and families who might want a Spanish dual language program for their kids, being able to do more with that in our schools in the future. So I'm excited about what's happening with this, certainly recognizing the challenge. Our, teachers and school leaders are working so hard on supporting our new families, but they're also incredibly proud of the work that they're doing too. And taking a lot of pride in seeing these kids learn English and really become really make the most of their time for us here in the city. So yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And I'm going to take that we will follow up with you. I will send you an email. And I noticed that Jesus Perez, Jesus, your hand was up and I thought it was part of the logo. So I apologize for missing you. Jesus is our district manager.
If Superintendent McGuire has time for one more question, I'd love to take advantage of his expertise.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Superintendent McGuire, for giving up your valuable time to come and speak to our committee about these large and important issues. If I may, I'd like to actually ask about a seemingly smaller operational issue that nevertheless I think may have big impacts for our district students. I was recently reminded of this issue by a member of the public who spoke to me about the shortage of school crossing guards. At their child's school, they are missing a crossing guard and really wish they could have one. We have a school or two here that are also in the same situation in this district. I was wondering, do you hear much from students, teachers, parents about the shortage of school crossing guards across the city and specifically in schools in this district? I understand the issue is more a matter for the NYPD and the mayor's budgetary considerations, but I was wondering if, in your opinion, there was a role that DOE could play in this. Is there more advocacy that DOE could be doing to help find a solution to this problem? Is there advocacy that you need from the community board, perhaps, that could help amplify DOE's efforts? I'd love to know your thoughts on this.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I have heard about it in some school communities. So I think you know, a lot of it comes down to really wanting to or really having difficulty finding folks who are you know, well qualified for this position, who are comfortable with the hours that are required for that position. So, you know, I encourage community members to reach out to their PTAs and local elementary schools to see if this is a need. We had one issue further downtown in CB1 that did get resolved, and they have a school crossing guard there now, but at the start of the year, there wasn't one. NYPD was very helpful, but, you know, a standard, you know, patrolman should not be serving as a school crossing guard. They have other things that are better ways of using of them. And so, but I was thankful that that one got resolved. But yeah, I would say that, you know, continuing to reach out to schools to make sure that there are a good number of crossing guards who are available for the school is an important thing to look at for sure.
And if they're not, what would you suggest that communities do? And you cited this example in CB1. Maybe there are some lessons to be learned for other communities that may be facing this.
Yeah, their PTA was, you know, were strong advocates for the school, but you know, thinking about the schools that are in CB6, I think that I certainly have seen crossing guards outside of the schools, but I think contacting PTAs is maybe something worth doing to find out how things are going and whether or not some advocacy is needed.
I think one of those crossing guards, and I'm not going to name the school because I want to double check the facts, but we passed a reso on Community Board 6 out of this committee to get a school crossing guard, and I was told we actually got the crossing guard. So, but so Superintendent McGuire, we're getting into the weeds here a little bit. You know, you're getting qualified people who can work from 8 till 10. And then come back and work from 2:15 to 4 that's really the heart. That's really at the heart of the problem. Okay, I want to thank Superintendent McGuire and Community Board President Silverman for giving us their time here this evening. And Kelly, we will be following up with your office. I have a long list here, and after you guys get to go, I will suggest the next step to our committee. But once again, thank you very much for being here, both of you, Len and Superintendent McGuire. Thank you.
Thank
very
you,
much.
John.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Take care.
Being here.
Thanks.
When we first started talking about this issue, and Abby Kruzmark is not here tonight because she couldn't be here tonight, but Abby is an immigration lawyer. And I was going to ask her, and I've already asked her, to spearhead this. I don't want to, and under the guidance of John DeRico, but I don't want to put anyone on the spot here to volunteer because I want to talk to Abby and see if she's still able to do this, because she's also on the Housing and Homelessness Committee with Rich Mintz's committee. So it would be a great overlap if she's still able to do this. So what I would like to do is, and I can see that Roberto has been taking very careful notes, which I appreciate very much. Because we had a lot of great ideas come out here. So we're fortunate this year that our November meeting usually falls like the day after Thanksgiving or the day 2 days before Thanksgiving or whatever. This year it's not until the Tuesday after Thanksgiving because of the calendar. So we will have a November meeting. The December meeting is scheduled for December 26th. I think that might be inconvenient for people who observe one of the holidays at that time of year. You can observe you know, the winter solstice, you can observe Christmas, you can observe Hanukkah, you can observe any number of holidays at that time of year that December 26th would be a convenient for. So, we will have a November meeting, and I would like to craft a resolution that makes that's strong on one or more of these topics after we gather them. And we had some great ideas. I think the whole bucket. I mean, they were all good ideas, but the continuity issue was really clearly got Superintendent McGuire's attention. So thank you all for that. Yeah, we are now at 7:45. And I have this thing about our meetings because everybody is busy. And I've asked you each to introduce yourselves, the new members, and I don't have any old or new business. I will ask briefly if anyone has a comment they want to make before we adjourn. I am committing to working with the minutes, getting Abby involved. And if Abby is still able to be involved and figure out how we have something substantive for the November 28th meeting. Are we good as a group? As an interested member of the public, are we good? Very good. Okay, thank you. All right, so if there's no other old or new business, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
That does not have to even be seconded. So, no, I'm not going to let Rick Eggers handle that. Too much respect for Rick. With no objections being heard, I'm going to adjourn the meeting, declare the meeting adjourned at 7:44 p.m. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.